Hello students, I welcome you all to my SWAYAM course titled Comics and Graphic Novels in Indian Context. We are into the week 6 of our course, which is titled as Graphical Biographies. Today's lecture, which is lecture 1, is based on Elizabeth Marshall's text Counter Storytelling Through Graphic Life Writing. So, going back to the introduction of graphical biographies before we begin, and as it is going to be the first lecture of this very unit, let me just introduce you with the theme of this unit. So, graphical biographies are kind of, we have read, a lot of us, we read life writings in various forms, in the form of autobiographies, in the form of biographies, in the form of letters, and in the form of notes and diaries, personal diaries that somebody has written down during his or her lifetime. So, in a way, life writing is not only just constituted by one particular set of writing which is mostly preferred or which is mostly recognized is autobiography, because autobiography being written by the subject themselves is considered or is thought of by the readers as the most reliable, authentic source of the narration of events as and how it happened with the individual who is writing, about whom the autobiography is. But it is also considered as important in a way that autobiography is also considered as one of the most reliable resources to rely upon, is also because that the kind of impact, the kind of emotions, the kind of turmoil, the kind of violence that a subject must have gone through, it is considered that it can only be recounted, told of how I felt or how what I thought at that particular point of time by the subject themselves. So, it is considered that a subject is at best it is the best authority to narrate what happened to him and how did they feel at that particular time, because feelings are something which are very personal. At best, when you are communicating to a biographer or to somebody in some way, they tend to be somewhere lost in translation, be somewhere thought in some other form, and they tend to lose out the actual content, the actual meaning that the autobiographical subject may have felt in the real place. So, but this unit actually familiarizes you with the concept of graphical biographies. So, biographies, as we all know, that they are not written by the subject themselves. Here, the autobiographical subject, the narrated I and the narrator I are different. In the biographies. So, the thing is that some author may be writing a life story of Mahatma Gandhi. Somebody may have taken the responsibility to written the autobiography of Ambedkar, cut, आज बहुत कट हो रहा है. Okay, somebody may have taken the responsibility of maybe authoring the life of Mahatma Gandhi. Somebody may have taken the responsibility of authoring the life of Ambedkar or Bhagat Singh or any other historical icon who belongs to the past. So, in the same way, biographies tend to have the narrated I and the narrator I as two different entities, as two different persons. So, here somebody is writing a life story of someone else. So, in a way, how the narrative differs when it is recounted by the person themselves, by the person who is writing it or by the person who is illustrating it, because there can be diverse form in which biographies are written. They can be written biographies, and as this unit is graphical biographies, so we are going to study the life history of an individual through pictures. So, it is very important who is drawing these pictures. What is the background of the person who actually, what is the knowledge that this person possesses about the narrated I. So how much knowledge do I have about Mahatma Gandhi if I am, drawing a picture book on Mahatma Gandhi? I should be very thorough about Mahatma Gandhi's, and to be order to visualize how Gandhi would have felt, this must have been the scene, drawing from the photographs, drawing from the archival records and resources. That is how biographies are made. So in this very unit, first of all, this is going to be the introductory lecture, which is going to be a critical methodology about how to read graphical biographies. And subsequently, in the upcoming lectures, we are going to delve upon particular biographies of various historical persons from the past. So this lecture title, Counter Storytelling. So biographies which are actually drawn kind of become an alternate history, kind of become an alternate narrative, because they are different from the written narrative, and pictures tend to exhibit reality, pictures tend to convey reality in diverse form, in different form than the written biographies. So introduction to graphical biographies. I will elaborate how the reading of eminent subjects being narrated and our viewpoints about them gets affected by witnessing them in the visual form. Here Elizabeth Marshall, she's laying out her aims, she's laying out her goals about this particular article, that how she is going to, what is she going to examine through this article. Another important point worth noticing here is that biographical literature is itself a separate form, and when it combines with the graphic novels, the result calls into account the amalgamation of two different forms to produce an end result of illustrated biographies. An eminent critique of comic and graphical books, Joseph Wittek, explains that, I quote, "Comic art form is particularly suited to these sorts of narratives because of the complexity in the representation that a mix of illustrative material and written word allows." Unquote. The unit will also examine the distinctions between two readings, literary and illustrated biography, and how they affect the subject being told is understood. Both biographical and autobiographical studies were written predominantly by faculty members of English and literature departments obliged to defend a genre once dismissed as mawkish, self-indulgent or marginal to the canon. However, because readers had a strong need to see the narrated subject about whom the facts were being told in the text, the introduction of images into these genres began with the inclusion of photographs of the narrated subject. It is well known that when someone wants to read a biography, they want to learn about the subject's life and discover the truths about it. A reader frequently selects a biography when they are greatly moved by a particular figure. It goes without saying that in these situations, the reader will make every effort to learn as much as they can about the personality. In many ways, the situation is comparable to the fan following fad, in which a fan wants to know every detail about a celebrity from his life story to practically living with them. Similarly, because they appeal to the greatest sense of the human body, that is vision, illustrated biographies have the ability to pique readers' or viewers' interest more than non-illustrated ones. Visually witnessing the character allows the reader to identify closely with the narrated eye and readily accept the character's experiences. So these are the reasons which are given, which are actually why. So there can be questions that why does somebody prefer illustrated biography when there are already so many written biographies on Mahatma Gandhi, for example. So for the very first reason somebody would pick up a visual biography is because of their desire to see things. We all want to see how things unfold. We all want to see and witness things materially. Everything wants to be visualized, and once they are visualized, they tend to have more power than being read in the written form. Because then actually they go on to visually, if you have seen something, that goes on to stay in your mind probably for the rest of your life, because you have visualized the scene, you have seen a visual scene, a visual of it through a photograph, through a sketch, through a painting. It can be in the form of anything, but something which is visually in front of you also tends to have a material evidence of the fact that it actually happened. And written biographies may seem to be sermons in some way, or maybe being narrated. One incident is being narrated after the other, which goes on to become very heavy on the minds of readers, because absorbing everything just by reading and kind of leaving everything to the imagination of the readers to visualize how things must have unfolded, it tends to become too heavy for the reader. But when everything is laid out, but when everything is visualized, when everything is given out to the reader, there is actually graphical biographies tend to become more nearer to the reality itself. They tend to become more authentic, because then they don't leave any space for imagination. And that is what biographies don't require any imagination, because they are facts, they are something which have actually happened in the real life. Any kind of imagination is going to distort the reality. So in a way, graphical biographies are much more preferred through diverse visual images, in which can be exhibited in diverse forms, which can be seen in the form of exhibition in an art gallery, which can be read in the form of coffee book volume. Somebody's life can be narrated through it, and which goes on to stay with the readers for a very long time when it compared to the written biographies. Graphical biographies are able to depict the subject's feeling and psychological circumstances in order to achieve their subjective self, as opposed to providing objective reality like written biographies do. A reader or spectator might thus grow very near to their inspirational character, making the genre's truth claim more profound and emotional. Leigh Gilmore says that illustrated biographies such as comics and graphic narratives operate in a seemingly substantial manner, where the graphical subject can claim, "I was there" or "I am here." The visual presence of this graphic figure is made all the more substantial when transposed in comics. The method of presenting facts in a biographical story with an eyewitness account aids in situational justification, which in turn strengthens the sense of veracity. Because of this, the truth that is conveyed in graphical biographies is more widely accepted and seems more authentic than in written biographies, which are overly numerous in contrast to illustrated ones. Now, coming to the Elizabeth Marshall's article, and by way of looking at her article, we are also trying to see what are the main arguments that she makes in this article, what are her observations when she teaches, when graphical biography is taught in a class of school, in a school atmosphere, because in schools children don't tend to have developed critical ability. They are still in the developing stage, and how it can be impactful in their studies of those very icons, in the understanding of those very persons who are being communicated in the graphical form. So this article focuses on how indigenous people and people of color create and draw autobiographical picture books that provide pupils different perspectives on who they are. So, but apart from autobiographical picture books, she also delves into biographical stories also through her article. Authors and illustrators draw readers' attention to alternative landmarks, guide them to previously unexplored places, and offer a fresh mapping of well-known experiences as they share their coming-of-age tales through text and illustration. 3 examples of graphic life writing that focus on the intersections of race, ethnicity, class, and gender are analyzed using the framework of critical race theory, particularly the idea of counter-storytelling in word and image. Underneath the veneer of normalcy, children's picture books frequently perpetuate implicit and explicit misrepresentations about indigenous people and people of color that, due to their recurrence throughout media and time, appear unremarkable. How graphic life writing can be impactful. Teachers can access previously untold tales and alternative pictures that challenge the status quo through graphic life writing by and or about traditionally marginalized groups. These texts also challenge and dispel prejudices present in children's literature and other cultural texts. Consequently, graphic life writing emerges as a potent medium for illustrating various realities. Developing a curriculum tailored to a particular culture and serving as an example of how to combat institutionalized racism. A way of telling the tales of those people whose experiences are not typically conveyed, that is, those on the outskirts of society, is the definition of counter story. Another technique for revealing, evaluating, and contesting the dominant narrative is the counter story. The graphic, autobiographical, or biographical counter stories examined in this article highlight the ways in which racism still permeates education and show us how to confront and end this oppression by using instances of young people's resistance. Refute story types of childhood. So, the reality is that while kids are already grappling with some of the world's ugliness, adults are still clinging to a Victorian idol of an innocent child. Graphic life writing written and illustrated by and within indigenous communities and by people of color denaturalizes the idea of the white child as an innocent bystander and calls attention to how racial subordination operates in the school. So, for example, what Elizabeth Marshall does is that she takes that one of the points that she makes that while trying to make that artist should follow while trying to make graphical biography is that their intention, their goal should be to kind of contest, to kind of resist the stereotypical representations of children in the picture books, and particularly because she is writing for an American setup, which can also be very much seen in relation to other countries also, that when you see the children books, when you read, when you go through them, the world is very it is all very good world, it is all very just world where no injustice is happening, where there is no animosity, where there is no rivalry, where there is no competition, and children are projected to be living in a very rosy world which has no kinds of evils. For example, because she is talking about race, which can also be considered in terms of when we are talking about caste or class or any kind of discrimination based on religion, based on ethnicity, because there are so many issues relating to migration that some people belonging to a particular country are kind of discriminated over the other. So all sorts of things. So what Elizabeth Marshall is arguing here is that children's books, when she's talking about race, that in America what happens is that for white children, for the books that are prescribed for children in school, they tend to show that there is no racism happening with the black children. They are completely unaware of it. Not only the fact that there is no racism happening, there is no kind of racist comments being made, or how students of color are being made to stand out from the white students, but the very fact that there is absence of black students or the students of color in the children's picture books in America. The very fact that these books are homogenized, they only represent only white America, needs to be contested, needs to be fought against, because America is also a heterogeneous country, and you have Native Americans there, you also have people of diverse nationalities there, and in order to make children sensitive and to make them understand to the problems of other communities, they should be introduced about such kind of diversity that exists in the real world at a very small age. The door should not be shut, but the door should rather be open to these children who can actually be able to identify and make judgments that just as they are whites, there are also people of color who are just like them in any way and should not be discriminated at all. Now, the second argument that Marshall makes is that write, illustrate, and teach counter stories. Rather than rely on commercial publishers, educators might publish autobiography or biographical projects that emerge from within communities and that draw on rich sources of material in individual and family oral and pictorial histories, institutional and community studies, and artistic and cultural artifacts and ideologies that would challenge the racial stereotypes found in popular and professional media. So she is also saying that other ways of removing such kind of discrimination from children's book and to make these books much more contemporary, fit to the real world, which is not as good as the rosy world, the image that we give to children, because children need to understand at a very young age about the sorts of reality, about the sort of world, about the challenging situations, maybe in a very subtle way, rather than just omitting it out completely and giving them a world which does not exist at all, which this kind of narration, this kind of picture books which are actually removed from reality are in a way going to increase the challenges of such children when they come out of the school and face the real world, and they don't find the world which they have studied in their books exist in reality at all. So what she's saying is that rather than going for established publishers who produce certain kind of books which are all white, which have eliminated all kinds of dark realities of the world, what school should do is prepare their own books, ask the students to draw their realities and maybe combine them and maybe collect them and kind of compile a book out of the children's experiences that they are drawing in the classes, which will be much more realistic, which will be much more reliable, and which will be addressing the needs of the children that they are living in. Even we have seen it in the previous lectures also, that how various graphic novelists have actually argued about the emergence of regional publishers who tend to cater, for example, like Zuban Books caters to the feminist voices and Phantomville caters to the visual narratives. So these kind of focused publishers are very much demand of the day. Pose guiding questions for graphic life writing. Again, she argues, the third point that she makes in her article is that you should ask questions that what kind of graphical life writing is going to be done in a particular book. Below is a list of guiding questions adapted from Yoso's framework. How does the subject of this autobiography maintain hopes and dreams in the face of barriers? Does the author include or write in more than one language or dialect? Are certain literary forms used in the book, such as parables or poems? What knowledge or lessons do young people in these autobiographies use that come from their families and or communities? Bridges share her own family history within the context of the racialized experiences of African Americans in the United States. What documents, photos, or information do the author and or illustrator include in their life writing? Upon what networks of people in the community do the author and or illustrator rely? How do youth navigate through institutions like the school that are not set up for communities of color and or indigenous people? Steps for change. Debbie Rees argues that publishing houses, review journals, booksellers, and libraries are all involved in the creation and consumption of children's literature. To change what happens during the processes of publication, review, and purchase of children's literature requires commitment to action on the part of parents, educators, and their allies. Purchasing and teaching graphic life writing by indigenous peoples and people of color in the language arts curriculum is one place to begin confronting the equity gap in children's literature. Thank you.